Oh, from New York, New York, you are listening to Extra Time, presented by AT&T 5G. I am Andrew Wiebe with my partners in soccer, David Goss. How many more Club and Country Todays left, Dave? Are you almost done?
We've got 3 more.
Okay. David Goss, the second hardest working man in the studio today. Charlie Davies, there's not a podcast in North American soccer he is not on, and we're thankful to have him on. I think we started the trend, Charlie. Welcome to the show, man. Welcome back to the show with some beautiful new primary color art behind you. I always appreciate your backdrops, man.
Thank you. I'm honored to be here.
And Charlie, you're our butterfly.
I love this.
Yeah, he's like our, he's like a statesman. Did you see him there? He's wearing the overcoat. He goes with, "Thank you. I'm honored to be here with all of you today." We got a big show.
Yeah.
Big show today. We're going to go through all 29 teams. So normally we would banter. We'd welcome Charlie back a bit more. We might ask him, I don't know, what he thinks of this Giovanni Reyna stuff and whether or not Greg Berhalter can reasonably be the manager of this U.S. national team going forward. But I'm sure more news will come out and we will hit that. Or you could just listen to Charlie on any of his other podcasts to get his take there. We're going to talk all 29 teams. We're going to set the stage for the offseason. We're going to try to get you ready for what will be a big week next week. Super Draft on Wednesday. The show starts on YouTube, Twitch, Twitter, and MLSsoccer.com at 4:30 p.m. Eastern. The Super Draft starts at 5 p.m. Eastern. We will be in St. Louis at City Park with a live audience, I believe. Don't hold me to that. I'll host the show. Matt Doyle will be there. We'll have Devin Kerr, who was calling that Cuse national title win the other day and is a college soccer expert, did a wonderful job last year. Jillian Sakovits will be there. Susanna Collins will be there. Should be a really fun show for you. The Super Draft a little early this year. So again, Wednesday, December 21st, 4:30 p.m. Eastern, YouTube, Twitch, Twitter, and MLSsoccer.com. The transfer window opens here in a little bit after the holidays, but moves are starting to come in. The World Cup's almost over, so free agency is starting to heat up. We have some trades to talk about on today's show. Anders is probably in the chat saying, shut up and get going. You have 3 minutes per team. A buzzer will sound, and when that buzzer sounds, you have got to be quiet. Let's start with St. Louis City. Expansion team, still building their roster. We have some wishes here. Matt Baker in St. Louis says he's wishing for a high-level two-way central midfielder to complement Ed Lowen. That'd be nice for St. Louis. But more than that, he'd settle for just hearing that Indy Vassilev is signed on a permanent deal from Aston Villa. We haven't heard that yet. My wish for them in the offseason, more depth, more quality. I'm looking at the depth chart here for St. Louis City SC. It is not exactly filled out. Who is the number 6? Who are the wingers? Are they good enough? Is Ostrak good enough at the 10? Who is Klaus going to be? Is Giacchini? What's his role? There are so many unknowns with this team outside, I think, of the 4 spots on the back line and goalkeeper. Parker, Nilsson, Nerwinski, Berkey, Pedro Nilsson, depends on that one. But I think they've got all that set. So this is an easy one for me to start with because, yes, David, it is a long list.
So
St. Louis
my understanding was
much.
List, but also like reset. What is their big thing to know about? What is their expectations?
I think to compete. And I don't think they want to put playoffs on the record. I don't think they want to come out and, Inter Miami dealt with this. They're like, we're going to take MLS by storm. Like, oh my God, big signings, big players, big expectations. And it blew up in their face. I think St. Louis is trying to be a little bit more humble, a little bit more quiet about what they want to do and what they want to be and what that will equate to on the results side. I think for St. Louis, Bradley Carnell, etc., I think if they have a identity that you can see immediately when you watch them, that high press that we saw with the Red Bulls, and you see improvement from all these players that, for the most part, don't have a ton of MLS experience, are sort of MLS unknowns. If they are competent, if they have clarity in the way they play, and if they compete deep into the season, just hover around that playoff line, I think that's going to meet their expectations for year one. And then you have the off-the-field stuff. The stadium is beautiful. St. Louis has just been waiting for this moment as a soccer city. I think that's what they're looking for. What do you think they're missing, Dave, when you look at that depth chart? Where's like the spot you're like, oh boy, like you better find somebody. Super draft, free agency, trade, off-season signing, whatever.
I won't say missing because it's a lot of unknown to me, I think. I would say that the question mark will always fall on your DP attacker and mainly your center forward, right? There's just not really a proven model of don't have a great center forward compete at a high level in Major League Soccer. So I think to me, it's less roster building and more just the ones that they leaned on. And obviously they made these signings, 6 months, 8 months, a year ago.
Are they good enough is what you're saying?
If they got them right. Yeah.
Yeah. Are they good enough? I think a central midfielder next to Lohan, deep lying, is probably their biggest quote unquote need right now. But then that's the other thing. Are these guys good enough? There's the buzzer. So that's the big question. Are these guys good enough? DC United, Charlie, you are up, man. DC United so far have had a pretty busy offseason. A lot of players heading out for DC United. I mean, some players headed in as well. You've got Pedro Santos headed in. You've got all sorts of guys coming in via free agency. Alex Bono, Tyler Miller on the goalkeeper front. But Wayne Rooney is building. We might see this Polish number 10 might come in as the attacking midfielder. What's the big question for DC this offseason? What is on their wish list?
As a former DC United player and someone that has always valued the organization and the fans and the history of the club, I would be disappointed with the moves so far this offseason. Derek Williams, unproven in this league, hasn't had the best of performances with the LA Galaxy, and that's who you're bringing in to shore up the back line. When I look at Birnbaum, he's 31, turning 32 next month. We know what he's capable of, is a good leader, good in the air, but I think they need youth in the back. I think they need direction. The goalkeeping has always been an issue for DC United, but you bring in Bono and Tyler Miller, who have also been, very shaky over the years. So if I'm trying to get excited about next year, it's very difficult if you're a DC United fan to say, man, this is the squad that we're gonna get out of the basement of the Eastern Conference. And then Wayne Rooney coming here. I know we talked about it a little bit before the show. He moved out of DC because he missed home. He missed being around his family. His family are still in England. If an offer comes, he's not here long term. This is a very temporary move. This is a short-term move. This is not something that you're saying, hey, 5 years down the road, we're going to have something really special here and we're going to accumulate trophies. This could be 1 year. It could be 2 years. I don't see it being more than 2 seasons. So as far as like a long-term plan, DC United still don't have one.
So Chase Jones hit us up. I asked for wish list or big questions on Twitter. Hit us up and said, hey, I'm a DC United fan. Can I get a time machine? I assume to go back to the days of old for DC, the dynasty days. Kathy hit us up, said, hey, I'd like some kind of direction or a plan or something. I think that's the big question, right, Dave? For DC, they're signing a bunch of, no offense, because I'm an old dude, like old dudes. And now, yeah, you can bring in the youth, and Wayne did that at Derby County, and he's doing that at DC, but like this sort of feels like patchwork for the time being, and maybe that's okay, but then you don't know how long Wayne is going to be around and who's running things on the front office side.
And how good it is, right? If they're going to win MLS Cup, great. That doesn't seem like the case. And then, as Charlie, you mentioned, if Rooney leaves, how much are these 33-year-old players that you're paying money to bring in from Europe going to be the roster you're going to build it around for years to come? So in a negative way.
Pedro Santos, you bring him in, but you also then sign a left back from Hammarby, my old club in Sweden. Just redundancy.
You've got 2 old clubs of Charlie Davies already, so put that down on your bingo board right now. Toronto FC, David Goss, of course, the big players we know him, Insigne, Bernadeschi. Jonathan Osorio signed a contract extension. Tam could be DP, TBD. Michael Singh is reporting that he could be a DP next year. If he's not, they somehow buy him down or get under it, then they would have an open DP spot. A lot of changes. Petrasso gone, traded, Crescito out, Daniel Henry, Akello, Alex Bono, Westberg, Achara, etc. Big rumors that Matt Hedges is going to sign as a free agent. What is the wish list? What is the question mark?
Do I get 3 minutes starting from now or a minute and a half?
Anders, he gets it now, okay?
No, Anders, don't do it. Hold Weeby accountable. The wish list, starting with that, is a defense. Literally, the entire defense from right to left back. Every single piece needs to either be rebuilt, replaced, or just brought in. That's the wish list. In terms of the bigger thought process, it's sort of what can you take from last year and what can this team be, right? Bob Bradley has built some of the best teams we've ever seen in Major League Soccer. Insigne, Bernadeschi, Mark-Anthony Kaye, Michael Bradley, Jonathan Osorio. Those are some of the best names we've ever seen in MLS. So the question is, can it all fit together? Is there a way that it all fits together? And in terms of shopping and buying, it all starts on that back line.
Left back, on the depth chart that I have for them, there's literally nobody. It's just question marks. We have a big question mark on Mavinga. My guess is he wouldn't be back. Charlie, how much would Matt Hedges, if indeed he signs, we know he was there for a Raptors game and they were putting the full court press on. Maybe he follows in the mold of Drew Moore. How much would Matt Hedges change things for you? They need a goalkeeper too, by the way. They don't have a goalkeeper.
Yep. I think he's a consistent center back, but you also have to play to his strengths. And I think Dallas were very good in the way that they approached the game defensively to not allow him to be in those 1v1 situations high up the pitch or having to cover the touchline. So if Toronto can defend with him being being central and organizing the back line, I think that's going to be very important for this team because he is class when it comes to communication, being consistent. You know what you're going to get from him every single match, but don't ask him to do more than what he's been able to do successfully over the past 5 years with FC Dallas.
Dave, you asked me about expectations for St. Louis. Toronto made the big signings and finished at the bottom, almost of the East. So what's
back. Last year you had a buffer year. Last year you had the coaches knew, the players are coming in. It's MLS Cup or bust this year. That's why you signed those big name players. They're all on the other side of 30, or some of them are. The fairness from the fan base and the expectations has to be MLS Cup or bust this season. Now, if they make a run, they win a Shield. Yeah, there's space in there to have the convo, but the season starts with that convo.
Perfect timing there. Kalen Carr in his MLS branded apparel, if you're watching on YouTube, ushering us on to the Chicago Fire. We are going in reverse order of the standings. Not sure if I said that. And starting in the East, so Western Conference supporters. We will get to you at the back end of the show. All right, the Fire. No Malort for me. No Malort for Ezra at the end of this season because no playoffs for the Fire. Obviously finished 12th. Shaqiri's back. Jairo Torres is back. Gaston Jimenez is back, but on TAM. So they have a DP spot. That's a big deal. Ruben Tish says he's wishing for Olivier Giroud to the Fire. In all seriousness, 2 starting fullbacks and a striker to replace Duran when he goes in the summer. Yeah, I think the wish list is like attacking talent at a level that either gets the best out of Shaqiri or for Shaqiri to be at a level that he gets the best out of their attacking talent. Like, there are a lot of holes here still for the Fire, but there are very good parts. I like Federico Navarro. I'm still TBD on Gaston Jimenez. Shaqiri should be a difference maker in this league. Torres should be. I don't know if we saw that last year, Dave, that we hyped him up an awful lot. Chris Mueller, that's a good depth piece. Brian Gutierrez should have like a jump-off year as a homegrown. But I think the thing I'm most excited for is that open DP spot because they've been ambitious. They've shown they'll spend money. I hope they go get a 9.
That's what you'd use it on, 100%.
I think so, because you have your D-mid is set, your 10 is set. I think your wings are close to set. You're going to block Gutierrez if you get a DP wing there, and you've got Mueller. Torres is supposed to be that. He's a DP signing as well. You're going to sell Duran. So
you need to go. Yeah, well, if you don't sell Duran, though, then you don't need to go get 9.
Charlie,
I know.
He's super talented, but he's also on Twitter being like, basically saying, I don't know if I want to be here. Like, you've got to ride him the first half of the year, get a big number. And look, Olivier Giroud is a big name. Like, if you're not in contact with those sorts of guys for a summer move, what are you doing?
Right. I know Olivier Giroud would really be interested in coming to Major League Soccer and having a conversation with him. So I think he wanted to go back to Europe after Chelsea instead of coming to Major League Soccer. So he went to Milan. He still felt like he had something in him. He still felt like he could be a part of the World Cup, which we're seeing him score goals and overtake the French leading goal scorer of all time. So it's I think it would be the right time to go and get Olivier Giroud after a World Cup, after a full season with Milan. I think that would be the time to get him. Just
wish list. Show your ambition and have that ambition pay off. You are the MLS team. You're the soccer team in Chicago. It has been dire for, we're talking a decade plus like with one or two flashes in the pan. Show your ambition and have that ambition pay off. And I know that there's pressure on Ezra in that sense. There's pressure on guys on this roster. Let's see it, Chicago. Let's see it. Speaking of ambition, David, Atlanta United is yours. They just made a move. We haven't talked about it. George Campbell traded to Montreal, who are swimming in allocation money for $600K, up to $900. Obviously, Thiago Almada, Luis Araujo, Miles Robinson coming back. They signed Derek Etienne. Juan Prada, he had his loan extended. But the big question is Joseph Martinez, or is it something else for you?
I think when you're talking about wish lists, obviously Joseph's not on that. I don't think you can do anything talking about Atlanta and not Joseph right now, because he is larger than life in Major League Soccer. He's obviously the biggest player in the history of Atlanta United. And so that's where the conversation has to start. And I think it's very odd that we were told he was leaving before Garth came in.
That was odd.
I still can't really put that together if what we were now told by, I guess you'd assume, was Carlos Bocanegra and Gonzalo Pineda, if that's even still true. So I think that's one of the things you have to think about, and sort of we're all going to find out over the next few weeks. But either way, with the George Campbell trade, what you see is Garth trying to generate a way to affect this roster. There's a lot of solidified pieces. There's a lot of younger pieces that got longer contracts. And you could honestly argue that the roster isn't that bad, right? They had ridiculous injuries last year. Pineda hasn't had a full year with a full roster since he's gotten there. And so on the one hand, there's an argument that there's a ton of talent there. And if you can find the right way to fit it together, you can be competitive. And that's sort of what Cincinnati did last year, right? In resetting things. And then now you can figure out and be more targeted with the next few moves. And I think that's the right idea for Atlanta United. So I don't think there is a long wish list and shopping list here if you've assessed that the players you already had are at the level that Atlanta United has told us based off the transfer fees and the contracts that they've given them. If you look in and say Santiago Sosa, Franco Ibarra, Purata, Marcelino Moreno, all these guys aren't good enough, then you all of a sudden have a large roster that you have to rebuild. That's all on the player side. I think on the non-player side, it becomes even more interesting. You brought in a guy in Garth Lagerwey who has a background as one of the best GMs in MLS. Who's going to be under him? Is it the guys who are already there or not, as well as the coach, which he did not sign, which is very uncommon for people who run major sports teams that they normally want.
But common for Garth.
100%. So I think most likely for Atlanta United, you can assume you'll win MLS Cup this year because that's what normally happens to Garth. And then Pineda will be the coach for the next 10 years. But that's, I think, even
Pineda's
more
been
interesting to look at.
Yeah. They have a relationship. And look, if you have question marks about Garth and how he's going to integrate, long conversation on this very podcast, he answered a lot of these questions. And what he said about Joseph was like, I'm going to trust the people that were here that experienced this with him. I wasn't here, so I've got a lot to learn. Also said he's going to let Carlos do his job, which, I hear that, but I also know that Garth is the best at that particular job. So I'm curious as to how that relationship works out. If there's no Joseph, what's going on in the number 9? And can they generate more allocation money with, say, Marcelino Moreno if he doesn't fit in? Those are big questions for Atlanta United. All right, New England Revolution, Charlie. Barrett Madden says, center back. Give us a Chad Marshall type, and we might just win a cup. What is this offseason?
Chad Marshall type, they might win MLS Cup.
Garth Lagerwey's raising his hand right there.
Yeah, I'd say first for the Revolution, they have to figure out the formation that they're going to play, and one that is suitable for the group that they have, because Bruce Arena had kind of set them up in a lot of ways. But if you are going to play Gustavo Bo as a winger, you're going to unbalance the team. If you're going to play Carlos Gil as a winger, you're going to unbalance the team, because they go all over the pitch, and then they're out of position completely when it comes to defensive responsibilities in the game, if the game is dependent on transition. So I think center backs, Andrew Farrell, Henry Kessler, they weren't at the top of their game last year. They need more depth. They need more experience. So that would be, and you look at the clean sheets. I mean, George Petrovic is phenomenal. That's a key signing. That's someone you can build a team around. I don't expect him to be here much longer with all the interest around him as a phenomenal keeper. So the center back is important, but also the midfield. So I look at a player like Eric Williamson, who's being shopped around to play with a Polster and a Carlos Heel in that midfield. That dynamic speaks to me. The Revs need depth. They need a strong spine. And for me, that would be massive if the Revs were able to, one, sign a key center back, and then two, figure out that midfield. And then you go up to the striker position. Giacomo Vrioni really struggled last year with open chances. It's not that he didn't get chances. He got chances and completely fluffed them. Gustavo Bo was injured for quite a bit. They didn't look like they worked well together or complement each other well with their skill sets. Neither of them has pace or acceleration or quickness. They both check for the ball, so they occupy the same spaces. It's going to be an interesting offseason to see what Bruce Arena does. I know they signed Bobby Wood, but also Bobby Wood's been injured most of his time with Real Salt Lake.
Yeah, I mean, I wonder what the window is here. Is that window still? Do you think the window is like the championship window? Is it still open? Is it like, hey, we have Carlos Heel, and so anytime you have Carlos, it's open? Because it sort of shut on him last year.
It's only open if they go out and get those necessary pieces. Plus, you still have Josie Altidor's contract that you didn't give him a chance to play. He went off on a loan. That didn't work. And then when he did play, he didn't show well. So he's still part of the team. I don't know if they're going to move him, if they're going to play him, but things didn't work out with him last year. So there's a number of questions. That championship window is only going to be reopened if they address those positions.
Some allocation money because they made a bunch of sales recently for big dollars. So maybe that's where the Eric Williamson stuff comes in. Somebody tweet that out. Let's get that ball rolling. We need Eric Williamson news ASAP. All right, let's talk Charlotte, Dave. You're up on this one. Not official yet, the Enzo Copetti news, but it seems like it probably will be for the transfer from Racing. They were much better under Lattanzio at the end of the year. So what is on that wish list for you? What are the big questions this offseason?
Well, I'll start with the big question, which is I think internally they have to assess what went right at the end of the year and if that's sustainable over the course of a season. And if you think it is, then you need to not make a lot of changes because it took you a year and a half, if you include the run up to becoming a team, of constant movement and changes to find your feet. And you need to create some level of stability to be able to continue to succeed. If you assessed that what went right at the end of the year, right? Derek Jones and Brandt Bronico at the base of your midfield. Swiderski, more of a playmaker. If you think Malanda is that high-level center back, which he looked like, if Nathan Byrne was the right piece, all of this came together at the end of the year. You need, if you decide that all of that is sustainable, then you need to do very little, I think. And now it's about building depth on the roster and finding other pieces, either to be able to change the game off the bench or like for like changes. I think Copetti makes a ton of sense. We talked about it on the last show as a signing. He brings different aspects, and I think him and Swiderski can either work together or he is a safety if Swiderski does leave because he is a true number 9 who covers a decent amount of ground and can finish and can sort of dictate things in the attacking half. And it feels like you do have wingers that are built to create for a player like that. And so I think that's where it all starts this offseason. And otherwise, there's not a bunch of massive holes. You could say left back as one for this team to try and bring players in. If you don't think Jones and Bronico are going to perform, then center midfield is one. You've lost Alan Franco and Alcivar and all these other pieces that you thought were going to be key there. And those will probably be where you do most of your shopping. But if you believe Joswiak was good enough, then you have to think he's going to be better next year. You have to believe in Kerwin
only
Vargas.
Be better.
Yeah. You have to believe in Kerwin Vargas as well. So a lot of that's already done if you do believe in what you saw last year.
So I think it feels to me like for Charlotte, it's, this DP spot, and they've struggled outside Swiderski to fill those spots ably on the DP side. They struggled to fill the coaching spot with a guy who could stick around and not cause, let's say, unnecessary drama. So then the big question, right, is do you believe in Lattanzio? And do you believe that Lattanzio can help them take the next step? They obviously believe in him. They gave him the job full time, and I think rightfully so. But the big question is Lattanzio. Can he get more out of Joswiak? Like a team like Charlotte, to me, they are not going to be able to make a leap, get into the playoffs, unless those guys that are supposed to be the top-level difference makers have any sign of being a top-level difference maker, which Joswiak didn't. And look, let's give him the David Goss grace period, right? And on that note, we keep it moving. Columbus Crew, Charlie, you're up. Big offseason for them.
Yes.
Wilfred Nancy comes in. Huge signing on that front for them. They also they lost Artur. They traded him to Houston. Derek Etienne left in free agency, and Pedro Santos left in free agency. But this is all about Nancy, right? Like Nancy and then Zelarayan, Cucho, Nagbe, and the core they'd already built.
And I think Wilfred Nancy is going to have to implement not only his tactics and the philosophy, but also empowering the young players, which he's done with Montreal. And I look at Jason Russell-Rowe as one of those players that I've seen some moments from him where I'm like, this kid has something. And there's probably not a better coach across Major League Soccer for a young player to give them that platform to help them develop, to help them understand how to have success in this league. So I look with Cucho Hernandez and Jason Russell-Rowe and Lucas Zelarayan, they have an attacking core in Darlington Nagbe. But again, is it Aiden Morris who plays? It looked like last year he didn't take a step forward. I know he's coming back from being out, so maybe this is the year where he can go forward after tackling and win the ball. He's got to do a little bit more, and I expect him to because I've seen him do it. So, I look at that run when they won MLS Cup. He was not only covering every ounce, every blade of grass on the pitch, but he was a tough tackler, and then he would be able to play the ball between the lines. If he can take that next step in his progression, he'll be a big part of this. So I think it just comes down to that back line. The back line looked slow last year. They looked not really up for the challenge in a lot of matches. They gave away too many opportunities. If Wilfred Nancy can find the right balance for this group defensively, I think they do it.
MLS Gone Wild hit us up, said Alex Collins to Crew 96, please and thank you. And I think that opens up a question for you, Dave, which is, what will the Crew look like under Nancy as far as formation? Do you think this is three-man back line? Do you think he's married to that? Or do you think he's willing to sort of be flexible in his shape and his approach?
Yeah, I don't think he's married to that. I think he showed with Montreal that he has his principles, the way he wants his team to play. I don't think the formation is the basis of that. But I don't know how this talent pool all fits together at its best. And so that will be one of the questions, right? Zelarayan doesn't really cover ground or do work defensively. So is a 3-5-2 where he's sitting off of Cucho the best way to use those two? And if that's the case, can they find a third center back? Because you wouldn't be able to play three center backs with the roster they have. Josh Williams has been fine when he's had to start at times, but you wouldn't go into the season with that, as well as you'd have no depth. So I don't think Nancy will be married to that, and I wouldn't be surprised if they don't play in that system to start the year. I will also say, Charlie touched on Aiden Morris. There's a lot of other young kids. They won MLS Next Pro that it's exciting to see Nancy how he gets them into the team.
Good timing there. Shouldn't have tried to jump in. By the way, a lot of people.
Do you see in the chat where?
I saw the 30 seconds part. Didn't see the 10-second part. By the way, Alex Collins is on the wish list for a lot of teams. A lot of people want Alex Collins, as do NYCFC. All right, Orlando City is mine. Mike hit us up. Says Orlando needs a 10 who is a goal threat. Hope Tommy Scoops is right about us being expected to spend a little bit. Derek Christian, all I want for Orlando City Christmas is a goal dangerous number 10. Also some competition at left back and some midfield depth. So that's a man after my list making preferences right now. So Orlando City have had a couple offers in South
competition
America.
At left back. Don't they need a left back?
Yeah, I think straight up.
Okay, cool.
Because obviously they lost John Moutinho. So that's an exit for them. They have changed their roster a good amount. They traded Andres Pereira. Pato gone. We know how big of a loss that is, both in our hearts, minds, and everywhere in between. Joaquini, they signed last summer. He's gone. Alvarado, they sold. And obviously, Junior Urso left to go back to Brazil to be with family. They brought in Luca Petrasso by trade. They signed Felipe Martins as a free agent. He also comes with multiple chips on his shoulder for the rest of the teams to borrow. And then they got a homegrown signing in as well and got Mauricio Pereira on TAM. But the big question, I think, is who are they going to sign? They have an open number 10. They have an open DP spot. Could that be the 10 that everybody wants? And then they've had bids rejected for Diego Gomez in Paraguay. He's 19. And Nacional forward Franco Fagundes in Uruguay. He's 22. So they're sort of going back to that well. And, oh, by the way, they have their summer signing from last year who tore his knee before he ever got there. which is a big question mark. Can he be back? To me, it's all about those signings. I think they're going to be better with Pereira a little bit deeper. I still wonder if Cara is the dude, which is why you see maybe Franco Fagundes, who's a young goal scorer for Nacional, being called in. And I think you have to wonder which players go from good to true star. Like Cesar Araujo is on the brink. He's like good to great right now in MLS. Can he be a true star? Cartagena, they made his loan permanent. Can he be a good to great central midfielder in this league? Can they get 1 or 2 more years out of Janssen and Antonio Carlos? To me, this team's window is sort of like open right now. I know they always say they're building, but how long can they hold on to Facundo Torres? How long can they hold on to some of these young players? They won last year, got their first trophy. I think they got to get that difference maker, whether it's the 10 or the 9, and got to get the most out of these young players. To me, the time is now for Orlando City.
Are we supposed to disagree?
I don't know. No, you can do whatever you want to do. Just
to me, Orlando City is just, while they competed, got to the playoffs, they're just so incomplete at this point. And so, yeah, I agree with all of what you said. My thought is, I think Facundo Torres will be even better this year. I think Erkin Cara will be even better this year. And last year, he did score double-digit goals, even though I think people were underwhelmed by him. So I do think you have that core, but they need a big-time piece, like you just talked about, with all those options to bring in. Otherwise, if they do that, a lot of the core exists in a good way, right? The center backs are still there. So the opportunity is there for this team to take a huge jump, but they have to put the money where their mouth is.
You want to do that. Speaking of putting your money where your mouth is, Inter Miami, Charlie, D hit us up and said, the elephant in the room is if Miami gets Messi or not, and a few things hinge on that pre-contract happening. Otherwise, give me a veteran center back, Long or Collins, and for Campana to stay healthy. It's not official, but Tom Bogert, is reporting that Leo Campana will be back on a young DP deal. So that would leave 2 DP spots open for Inter Miami. Charlie, is this the case? Does it all hinge on Messi?
Yes. I mean, you do everything in your power. The fact that you're even in the running is incredible. You are one of a very few clubs that Lionel Messi can see himself playing at. That's incredible. So you move mountains, you part seas, you do whatever it possibly takes to bring Lionel Messi to Miami. And you wait till the last moment until he absolutely signs something, a contract that is either coming to your club or elsewhere. You do whatever it takes to leave that open. And if that means recruiting Sergio Busquets to make sure that happens, then you do that, because that's something that's special. That's a game changer. That's a monumental moment. That's the equivalent of David Beckham coming to MLS to play for LA Galaxy. If you get Lionel Messi, considering the path that he's on now, basically on the verge of the pinnacle of our sport in the history of the game, if he wins this World Cup with Argentina, you do whatever it takes. And you leave it at that. It's Lionel Messi. So that's awesome. It's exciting for the league.
How do you sort of bridge the gap between now and then, Dave? Obviously, Chris Henderson, Beckham, the Moss brothers, literally everybody involved in Miami are certainly full court pressing Messi. And, maybe things have already got to that point. Here's our offer. You decide when you want to decide, etc. As Charlie said, you grease the sled. You do anything you can do. It's like recruiting a top-level college basketball player. If you got to hire his dad to be your ops guy in the background, you got to hire his AAU coach. I don't care. You do it. How do you behave as you wait for that answer?
Listen, I think there's a pretty safe space for this Inter Miami team, the way they played, the way they rallied under Phil Neville last year, to be competitive while leaving that spot open. I know they've lost Higuain, and in this scenario, they probably don't bring Pozuelo back, but it's still the basis of that team was the defense. It was Drake Callender, who was one of the goalkeeper of the year candidates, and it was that central midfield with Gregory as at the base of that. All of that still exists. And you saw last year, Campana is special enough to help you create chances in games that you don't have a ton of the ball. It feels like there's enough of an identity of this team that they can compete until Messi comes, if Messi's going to come.
I like that it ended on if Messi's going to come. All right, you're up, Dave. FC Cincinnati, just a fairy tale year for the former spoon holders.
Yeah,
What's the big question? What's the
So the big question is, can they sustain last year? Right? Because last year was this huge jump. They were 5th in the regular season. They win a playoff game. If you look at the course of the regular season, I would argue they played better than 5th place for large stretches, and they didn't even bring in all their pieces until the season went along. So I think that's the conversation. Not how do we get better? How do we maintain? Because if they maintain, they will get better. Teams will drop off above them. Other teams will make moves. They're young. They have a young coach. It's how do you go about doing that and keeping everyone motivated? On the wish list, it's pretty easy. It's almost only along the back line. It's definitely right back. If you think Matarrita's back and healthy, then it's center back. And that's kind of it for this team. They've got depth in goalkeeper. They've built depth along the front line with Sergio Santos, who they've brought back. You're not going to replace Lucho Acosta in your team ever. So there's no such thing as building depth for that. And obviously they made the big signing with Nwoboda. Matt Miazga came in later.
But where can they get better? How can they compete for MLS Cup this year? Because I feel like that's the benchmark. Can they get into the final?
Yeah, I think, Charlie, if you say, what would they have looked like for the full year if Nwoboda had started the year and Matt Miazga had started the year last year, right? And that's kind of the answer in the short run. And because how can they improve in the attack? They can't, right?
Yeah,
so there are small pieces you need to fix, which for an MLS Cup team exists. Like you need to have Ryan Hollingshead at right back to win MLS Cup and Diego Palacio at left back. There are no holes that don't matter, but I don't think there's a big signing that needs to be made. The one combo would be in central midfield alongside Nwoboda, but you have Moreno, you have other options in there. I don't know what happens with Kubo. He has had one of the weirdest MLS careers of any person in history. So
they just signed Marco Angulo, no? The young Ecuadorian kid from the Valle.
That didn't seem like a now signing. That felt like a future signing, but I could be wrong. That's sort of what we've seen with those types of moves so far. But again, how can you look at what happened last year and say we need to change everything and we need to overhaul a lot of stuff, right?
It's painful for them, I think, if indeed Matt Hedges is going to sign elsewhere, which it kind of seems like it is. And they did full court press. They brought him into the stadium, had his name up, etc. Matt Hedges would have been that piece that you're talking about, Dave, of hey, we drew a lot of games on multiple goal score lines that we shouldn't have drawn because we made bonehead errors in the back or we lost concentration. And Matt Hedges is that guy in a 3-man back line that could settle things, could be sort of a director, could let Miazga and Hagelin go out and hunt and do their thing. That seems like a bummer for Cincinnati. And now they got to go back to the drawing board. I wonder if they're in for long. I wonder if they give Collins a shout. I wonder where they go because they do need depth at center back. Fine. But congratulations to Cincy. They go on an offseason trying to improve on something good as opposed to drag themselves out of the mud. All right, Nashville SC. Not an unbusy offseason by Nashville SC's standards. So far, they're doing their normal thing by flipping international spots and just stacking up GAM in the process. They brought in Fafa Picault from Houston, which I think is a good move for them. Not like, oh my God, spectacular, but a solid move. Jacob Schaffelberg's loan was made permanent. They bought him. Eric Miller, really the only guy going out. Some other big news here. Nashville SC tweeting earlier this morning, there's a new Hani Mukhtar hair alert. Hani is now, he's bicked it. He's gone bald. So a little more streamlined for the year 2023. And Tracy Edwards hit us up and said, I primarily just want to see Nashville SC show some genuine ambition. We have 2 of the league's best 11. I'm certain Walker Zimmerman and Hani are those 2, but no real effort to further capitalize on this thus far. Good is not good enough, in my opinion. We showed ambition by building a 30,000 seat stadium. Time for the next step. Well, Ake Loba was that next step, and we're sort of a broken record on that one. I'm going to go on the record and just say that isn't going to work out. That's what Fafa is replacing, right?
So is that would you say bust?
Oh, bust. Yeah, for sure.
Bust.
That's a bust. Yes. The thing I will also say is we haven't seen a full season of Shaq Moore. That was a big move for them. I mean, they moved Alistair Johnston to bring in Shaq Moore. That's how much they thought of Shaq Moore. But I do think the next step for this team is helping Hani. Is by committee with CJ and Teal and Fafa and I guess Loba Randall Leal, who hasn't shown an ability to like be a pile up the box score stats guy in MLS. Is that enough? Like, I think that's the question for them until it's not. And like part of that question is, can Hani maintain MVP level form as that dude for the third year running? That's not easy. Most players are not able to do that. Hani has been absolutely incredible, but you're sort of on a, there's a little bit of a seesaw here. Like, Hani's up, everybody else is down. If Hani goes down, I don't know, it goes up. It's not like everybody else is going to pick up that slack. So they're just kind of in that little purgatory where like a little bit more help on that side could make them elite, but I'm not sure they've made the signings to get them there. And I understand why. Mike Jacobs is dedicated, sort of like slow and steady. Like, we've got a core that we like. We know we can compete. I just feel like there's another level that they haven't yet got to, and they won't unless they make that signing. Charlie.
Spot on. That's all I got to say. I look at this team, and that's out of character for Nashville to go and spend big, especially on some of these World Cup players that I think have shown that you could probably go out and get them with an attractive offer. And I just feel that Nashville have played it safe and have been patient and aren't willing to take those risks and chances just yet. So I wouldn't expect them to sign a big player to come in and complement. So I think it's going to be one of those seasons where if you have a performance from CJ Sapong and Teal Bunbury and there is a chance they move forward, but they're going to need to get somebody in.
Still a playoff team in my mind. New York Red Bulls, They made the playoffs. Dave, you're up on that one. Christopher hit us up and said, I'm not sure if it's actually what we need most, but I would give anything for Red Bulls to have a consistent goal scorer in the number 9 position again. And 010 license to post. Red Bulls need to move on from Klamala, more importantly, a legitimate right back, Kyle Duncan, nor the Hydra of Dylan Nealis, Lewis Morgan, Tom Edwards, and Kyle Duncan again. None of that have replaced the void left by Murillo. I love that we have the void left by Murillo in this show. So what's on the wish list? What is the story of the offseason for the Red Bulls, Dave?
They're kind of wrapped up in the same. The story is what's different from the past few years. And if the answer is nothing, then the wish list gets pretty short, and it's some, RB global smart signings against the cap for the future, and, some young players that could make a difference, and maybe 1 or 2 veterans coming in. But otherwise, that's most of it. Now, I think that conversation starts and ends with Aaron Long. Can you get Aaron Long to come back? Because if you do, then all of that's probably enough to compete at the top of the Eastern Conference, right? This is a team that will make the playoffs. Like, I think we should say that today.
What if they don't get Aaron Long? And of course, Corey Burke, talked about those kind of buckets of signing. Corey Burke was the veteran forward in free agency they signed. Elias Manuel is the crafty Red Bull scouting network signing from Brazil. And Curtis Afori is the homegrown. So they've kind of hit all their buckets. But what if they can't re-sign Aaron Long? And it doesn't seem like they will.
I think they'd tell you that some people in MLS thought Andres Reyes was a designated player, level good, and that Sean Nealis has been one of the most consistent starting center backs in MLS, and that's enough. Like, that's how it's happened in the past, right? Every time they've let someone big go, it's been the next guy up's opportunity, and sometimes it's worked and sometimes it hasn't. So, again, this is a team that will make the playoffs. Like, they are good enough already. Frankie Amaya and Daniel Edelman and Christian Casares and Omir Fernandez. There's enough talent in there, and obviously Luquinhas, for them to make the playoffs, and they know who they are. A lot of these MLS teams don't know who they are, and they stumble around for large sections of the season. They won't win MLS Cup if this is what the team looks like as well. That's a decision they have to make. They have a new sporting director, and you have to wonder.
I'm not so confident with that guarantee of a playoff team.
All right, Charlie.
Yes.
Put your name on the line then there, because I'm not doing it. I've already tried, and I have lost every single time.
I wouldn't guarantee the Red Bulls to be a playoff team. Is what I'm saying.
Are you guaranteeing they won't make it?
No, I'm not guaranteed that they won't make it. But I'm saying
Boston, baby, Boston.
That is, you know what that is? That's take purgatory. You're hovering around like in the clouds, Charlie. Like, I can't go up, but I won't go down. Like, I'm
smart enough to know I'm not coming into this and saying right away the Red Bulls are not a playoff team. They are not going to make it because who knows? Next week they could come up with this crazy signing.
No, they can't. Don't lie.
No, probably
not. No, they're not.
They could surprise people, but
no, they can't.
Yeah, it's not a guarantee.
They're not going to. I don't think they will. Maybe players sold, though. We could see John Tolkien, maybe Christian Casares. Watch them. We'll see with the Red Bulls. Couldn't get Charlie to go either way. We'll see what he has to say about New York City FC. The big question, I think, for New York City, there's actually a lot more questions than I thought that there would be when I did some of my early research here. So Alex Collins and Sean John are free agents. Tom Sweezy of MLS Aces said, can I just get these two dudes to come home? Like, we need Collins, we need Sean John. Jonathan Sanchez, a noted enemy of David Goss, says,
we're good.
You're good now?
Yeah.
Everything has been tightened up?
Me and him are Ecuadorian brothers. We're good.
Okay, got it. He wants Cristiano for NYCFC. TBD, they haven't made any big signings. Santi Rodriguez might leave. Maxi Morales seems like he's got an option, but he's sort of like, hey, I'd like a longer contract than that. I'm sort of a club legend and all. Yeah, there's some big question marks, Dave. Or excuse me, Charlie, for New York City FC. What are the biggest ones?
The back line. I mean, Alex Collins and Sean John. For you to even keep that window open of competing for a championship, they need to be signed. And if they're not, they're both, I mean, could be used anywhere. We just talked about DC United needing a keeper, Toronto. Sean Johnson it would be a massive signing for anyone who is not certain that their keeper will be able to keep them in games. So I would say Sean Johnson, and then Collins for me is the best center back in the league. Always top three. So consistent, can play left back if needed, can get into the attack, but he's calm, he's confident, he rarely makes mistakes, and if he does, he's smart enough to win the ball back or make the foul. I just think this is a special defensive player in a league that is not known for the defensive players. So you do whatever you can to sign him. We talked about the Revolution needing center back. I would do whatever it took to try and sign him. He's a special player. So for New York City FC to still be in that conversation of a championship team, they need to sign both, not one, both.
In the hierarchy for you, Dave, who's most important for them to sign between Collins, Sean John, Maxi, and Santi?
Whoa. Oh, man. That's not a fair question at all.
So I put it to you. Who's number one? Who'd be most important to re-sign? Like for the future of the club, and you can define that however you want. Could be immediate, could be long-term, could be sort of the soul of things.
I guess I would say Collins if you put the question that way. I have a ton of respect for what Sean John means to this team and who he is as a person culturally. But goalkeepers, I think, are more replaceable in Major League Soccer. Maxi, if you hadn't said the long-term thing, I would have said Maxi for this year because there is a lot of young pieces that are moving. And Santi Rodriguez, let's be real, they bring him back, they're going to sell him. Like, he's not there for a while. So I do think Collins is the one, but that's why they signed Thiago Martins. Like, they've already prepared for this moment.
And Kevin O'Toole, obviously.
Boom.
Bam. And Kevin O'Toole.
OT.
All right, Dave, you are up. CF Montreal. There are a number of questions. Nobody has had a busier offseason than Montreal. There have been a lot of outgoing moves. Wilfred Nancy goes to Columbus. Georgi Mihailovic transfer to AZ. Ismail Kone transfer to Watford. Alistair Johnson transfer to Celtic. Victor Wanyama, they say they're not bringing him back. We'll see. They let both starting goalkeepers go. Didn't pick up options on him, James Pantemis and Sebastian Breza. They did bring in George Campbell, as we discussed earlier. They could sell Joel Waterman and Kamal Miller, who are probably two of the top three returning players. So now what?
It starts with the coach. Who's the coach of this team? And when you bring those coaches in and you interview them and they have their conversation about what they want to do and you tell them what the club wants to be, that's going to answer what you're trying to accomplish this year. I wouldn't be shocked if we'd love to make the playoffs, but we're just looking to reset everything to build once again, right? We're starting where we were 2 years ago under Thierry Henry at the time, which then became Nancy, to start to build our 3-year process now once again to try and do what we did before. And my hope would be, and I've said this a few times, that this is the last time they have to do that. I think they hit too early previously where the academy's not ready to fill in and they haven't filled all the pieces yet in the future. But it all starts and ends with the coach. Who will the coach be? Will tell us what they want their identity to be, where they think they stand in Major League Soccer and what they're trying to build and trying to grow. And I think from what we've done on this show, the names we've brought up, we all kind of have a clear idea, right? We've all brought up coaches who are youth developers, who have connections to their academy specifically, or young players in Canada in the region. That's where we all think they should sit. From a pure roster point of view, I can't even begin to answer that question because there are so many pieces. I would start with Wanyama, right? That's the one guy that has made a difference to your roster and helped young players and raised your floor when he's on the team. So that would be the first piece. I wouldn't expect them to sign big names in other spots. I'd expect a lot more of the George Campbell moves, which is we're flush with allocation. All of you in Atlanta point of view, it's you spent money on other center backs. All right, we'll give you a little bit of money back and we get your young player. For other teams, it'll be the opposite. It'll be like what Colorado did with Kevin Cabral, which is you guys spent money on this player outside the league. Doesn't work for you. We think that we can make them better. So we'll give you some allocation money to take them off your hands. That'll be probably the biggest moves. And as I've said a few times, I like a lot of pieces that are in this team. I like the George Campbell move. I like the Chinosi 04 move. I like Mason Toye and what he can be for this team this year. But again, you don't have a head coach.
Yeah, Joaquin Torres, Rita Zuhir. I might actually argue with you on the head coach thing that the most important thing they have is already established, which is Olivier Renard and the idea of what they're going to be. They know they go find a coach that fits it, and they can sort of say, hey, you know what? Wilfred Natse did an amazing job, but we think we can keep this train running with the right sort of person and mission because it's already set for that guy. We'll see what happens.
I spent 2.5 minutes talking about who the head coach should be, and you said you disagree. You think it should be the head coach is the biggest thing.
No, I said I think the biggest thing's already decided.
Got it.
The head coach is just another cog in the machine for them, I think.
Okay.
But we'll see. I think it's a big year for them. Okay, let's talk Philadelphia Union. That is me on this front. Philadelphia Union so far this offseason, they sold Paxton Aronson. So they lost the depth that they had in central midfield. They didn't actually have a ton. And they went out and got Andres Pereira with some of that allocation money that they've brought in by signing big players. I don't see big club-changing moves coming this offseason for the Union on the incoming side. Maybe on the outgoing side, though. And I look at Kai Wagner in that sense. Is this finally the offseason that Kai Wagner gets sold? We've been talking about this for, it feels like 3 windows or so with Kai Wagner. Kind of feels like it's put up or shut up time on that front, but like the core is there. Andre Blake, Gazdag, Glesnes. They re-signed Bedoya, so Bedoya is coming back. You know that. Elliott in the back line. TBD Mbaizo, he could be going the way of Wagner, but Jose Martinez, Leon Flock, Jack McGlynn made his way into that core this year. Your 2 forwards are set, and Ura and Carranza. Like, I don't see any big-time moves coming. I see more of like the Pereira moves where they're like, okay, well, we see an opportunity to add quality and depth and value. We think we're going to play about 50 games this year. We want to keep the chemistry. We want to keep the understanding of what we're doing at a high level. We actually think there's more to come from Ura, maybe even Carranza. Let's reinforce the midfield. Let's bet on our back line, and let's run it back. And if we lose a guy, we fill the spot with the homegrowns that have been waiting for a long time, like Matt Real or, Harriel got in last year for Mbaizo, but it was Mbaizo at the end. We have plug-and-play dudes that can do the job. I don't see this offseason as one where they're going to make any big moves, Charlie. I feel like this team is sort of set, and they're running it back.
100%. I'm with you. And they were damn near that close. So I don't see them having to make any significant moves. If you can strengthen your roster, great. But they have a lot of youth coming through. I think Jack McGlynn, he learned a lot. I think Paxton Aronson, he came in a moment where they needed experience, and I think that was the game changer in extra time. I mean, to see Gareth Bale get an opportunity because Paxton Aronson wasn't marking on that throw-in. So it's one of those moments where I think the younger players, they gained a ton of experience last year, and now they're going to try and get infused into more of I think basically a role where you are a part-time starter, but you get a lot more minutes this year. And if you take your opportunity, then you might be displacing a starter. So this Union team is strong, and with Andre Blake back there, they're good. They are good.
Yeah, it feels like and this is the way it works for clubs like Philly and Dallas and Montreal, etc. A time comes where the responsibility sort of shifts and falls on younger shoulders, or the load that they were asked to carry gets increased, and the guys that can handle that or thrive or do better keep pushing on, and the guys that can't sort of get pushed back down the depth chart, and the next young guy comes in. We will see. The only big moves I see this team making are on the outgoing side. Big offseason for Philly as they look to get back to the top. Okay, that's the Eastern Conference. Let's switch our attention to the Western Conference. We'll start with San Jose.
Not a fan of San Jose. Playing against them, they are playing very dirty football, and I don't think they deserve points ever.
That's Anders quick on the trigger with the Daniel Shalhoub clip from that's a wonderful clip. That's a wonderful clip. Maybe only second to Frank DeBoer, but don't get any ideas, Anders. Don't play at the end, maybe you can hit Frank DeBoer. Dave, take us through what you're thinking for the offseason with San Jose, who's probably, their biggest move is that they hired a head coach, and now that head coach is actually going to be there because the World Cup is over, and Luchi Gonzalez can turn his attention to the Quakes.
Yeah, it's exciting for San Jose, right? This is what you've been waiting for, and it's been super unfortunate how it's gone about, and Matias Almeida's relationship and all of that, but I've said it a few times on the show, the work was done behind the scenes while Almeida was there to build the club up to be ready for this moment. And so I think the first assessment as Luchi comes in is what's the goals over, this year or two? And then it's immediately which of these young players that we've worked so hard to build through is ready, and how do we build the pathway to get them into the first team? Because San Jose has clearly established that they would like to be a Philly, a Montreal, a Dallas. And that starts with that first big sale, proving who you are, putting your flag down, right? For FC Dallas, once you sold a player to Bayern Munich, now everyone else started to pay attention. You could start to set your prices. And on the flip side, for Philadelphia, it was Mark McKenzie. It was Brendan Aronson. So what are you going to do? And Cruz Medina is obviously the first name that comes up, but there are other pieces in here where can you build a competitive squad? And that's obviously the goal of a first team at all times. But also, can you assess which of these players are going to come in and which of them can be difference makers this year? And how do you get them to the highest level? On a roster side, there's a few spots here and there you're going to talk about, but if they still have Jackson Ewell on this roster, like a lot of it's kind of set, right? Jeremy Abobasi is your center forward. Christian Espinoza is in this team. You got a wing spot that's going to be up for all of the young pieces, your draft pick last year in Buda, Cade Cowell, all of those pieces. You're probably set in goal. And one of the things I'm putting out there early, Emi Ochoa should be the starter for San Jose. This kid's Gaga Slonina good. Keep JC Marcinkowski around and he takes back over, but I think they need to push Ochoa into the team. But they signed money on center backs already last year. So a lot of this team's kind of set. It's going to be Lucci's ability to be able to get more out of it and make it all fit together. And they have to make some big decisions on.
Do they make the playoffs?
I don't know. I need to see them make some moves.
Weeby says no.
I say no. I think they'll be much better, but I think it's a little early for them on the playoff side. Benji Kikanovic is a fun player. I think he probably is your wing starter. If you're talking about starting to set your market, I don't think it's Cruz Medina that sets it to start. Cade Cowell is probably going to be your early sale. It seems like he could even go as early as this offseason, depending on what.
But I don't think it's going to be at that number.
No, it won't. But at least shows like, hey, we are developing players that can go to a top 5 league if indeed the interest from like Ligue 1 in the past has been there. Takaris, I think, has a chance. They got a couple young attacking midfielders. We'll just end it there. But yeah, very interested to see what Luchi Gonzalez does in San Jose. I am taking the Houston Dynamo. Ben Olsen is the biggest signing of the offseason. They needed a coach, and they obviously went very pragmatic on that. That could really work out for them. Somebody that they trust in that position. Artur.
Charlie's going to blink a hole in his camera right now just listening.
Artur. That's a good trade from Columbus, I think, to bring some veteran presence to that midfield. Tim Parker out. Good move for them to clear salary cap space. Same thing with Darwin Quintero. Fafa gone. Mateo Bajimic gone. Zarek Valentin gone. Zeka gone. Memo Rodriguez gone. They are turning things over, which is what they needed to do on a roster that had some really significant cap issues. But I would say the big question mark for the Houston Dynamo, as it was through the second half of last year, outside the coaching side of it, is like Hector Herrera is supposed to be the dude. Like, who is he going to be in this league, and how do you build around him in a way to get the most out of this team? I'm sorry. Right now, I like that midfield number 8 duo of Carrasquilla and Hector Herrera. If Herrera has the juice to keep going, has the legs.
But he won't be an 8, right?
I mean, what else can he be?
Well, why would you bring in Artur then?
To play the 6? Because you haven't had a reliable
Carrasquilla.
6? Yeah,
all 3 of
Carrasquilla's-
those are 8s and 6s, right?
Yeah, no, you don't have a 10. That's what I'm
So
saying.
you're playing 3 of them, and my assumption would be Hector Herrera is the one who will play in a more advanced role.
Correct. I think it'll be 2 8s, him and Carrasquilla with Artur behind him. That's just a guess. I don't see other players on this team that would. I mean, I guess Matias Vera could be your 6. He was not horrible last year, but then it's like chance creation. Okay, where do your chances come from? You're talking Corey Baird, Sebastian Ferreira, and Olfarsson in your front 3. Like, I think Sebastian Ferreira could be a 15-goal scorer in this league consistently, but
Do they make the playoffs?
No.
Charlie, just one question and move on.
No. They're in like
Charlie's trying to save time for LAFC at the end.
Yeah. They're in
Are they competing for Spoon?
I wouldn't make them a Spoon favorite, but there's a world in which they could be, and there's a world in which they could be hovering around the playoff line, in my mind. This to me is, unfortunately for them, sort of yet another transition year. I still have big questions about center back, because right now it's Steris and Hadibi. Lundqvist and Dorsey, it's like middle of the pack outside backs. Steve Clark was very good in Portland. Wasn't as good last year. I mean, they're just still in sort of like, talking about purgatory on your takes, Charlie. They're sort of in like roster, coach, club cycle purgatory. And hopefully this is the year where they get a foothold, figure out who they are, what they want to be, get the most out of Herrera, or at least get him on the right path and the guys around him on the right path. But correct, I'm not currently saying that I think the Houston Dynamo would be a playoff team. I just stretched. I knew that was coming, and I had to stretch to it. Okay, Sporting Kansas City. Charlie, that's you.
Yes.
Alan Pulido, he is back. He's healthy. Gadi Kinda is back as well. They did most of their big moves in the summer window, and you'll remember Willie Agata. Yeah, Willie Agata was a big one for them. Eric Tommy was another big one. They brought in Nemanja Radoja from Levante, who's I think going to be the 6 probably, or at least compete with Remy Valter as the 6. So Izzy Matt Marine is gone, but they have re-signed some of the vets, Andreu Fontas, Graham Zusi, and Roger Espinoza. So what is this offseason?
Alex Collins would be a big signing for this team.
Yeah, everybody wants Alex Collins.
Yes.
It's a good time to be free agent Alex Collins. I'll tell you that right now.
And you have Johnny Russell, who's 32, Zuzi, who's 36. So some of their players that we've known over the years that have performed at a supremely high level are getting up there in age. But this is a team that I think can compete in the Western Conference. Agata, I think, has really given them a player who can just score goals and who's a threat, who's a real danger man, given an opportunity. So I like with Pulido in the lineup, healthy, and he can stay healthy with Agata up there and Shallowy. This team can still keep the ball, because anytime under Peter Vermees, typically teams know how to gain possession and keep possession. And then it's just about they've had a lack of a scoring threat over the years. But if Agata and Pulido can strike up some sort of partnership and chemistry, this team can be tough to beat. Is
it partnership though? Because he's pretty dogmatic about that 4-3-3. Is it like who's gonna be on form?
You could still a front 3 is still a partnership, and still there's chemistry within the front 3. So maybe it's Pulido's playing in an inverted winger type role, playing underneath as a 10 type role, because Pulido can play in any position in the attack, and Agata can probably only play centrally. He's not a winger. So with that, I think that there's a lot of work that Vermees is going to have to work through in terms of formation and tactics so that the balance is right in the attack. But this is a team that can compete if everyone's healthy.
I agree with you, Charlie, and I would add a year off for Pulido. You're talking about a first half of the season where you're still managing him back, right? So you don't really need to like make the decision or sort of deal with a guy getting less playing time or whatever, probably for a little while. Then you add in Leagues Cup, you add in US Open Cup. It's probably something, that conversation is probably one, if Pulido is fully healthy, that you're having in August and September for the first time, because you're just working them all in. And then, as Charlie said, you can play a few of these guys in different roles. You're not reliant on Daniel Shalhoub's finishing to decide whether or not you're able to win games, which that's not a knock on Daniel Shalhoub. It's just now you finally have options. And we didn't even talk about Gadi Kinda in all of this as well. So you're bringing a ton of talent back to a team that ended the year on one of the hottest streaks of anyone in MLS.
I like when that timing comes in. This is what can't finish that thought. All right, Dave, you got the Seattle Sounders. They lost Garth Lagerwey. That is a significant loss. But they have Craig Weibel. He's stepped right in for them. I don't think a ton of moves so far this offseason, which is not surprising given the state of their roster.
They brought back Freddie Montero.
They did. They just re-signed Freddie.
Move.
Yeah, but they let Will Bruin go. And Alfonso Ocampo Chavez. He went to Austin. That was fascinating. So where are they at? They're going to play. The rumors are they're going to play Club World Cup. Where?
In Abu Dhabi, I think.
In Abu Dhabi in February.
Anders would like me to read the first sentence he wrote down for this, which is, the question for Seattle right now is, do they beat Real Madrid by 2 or 3 goals at the Club World Cup? That is the biggest question.
Huge question.
For the Seattle Sounders going into it. What Anders put down, which I think is probably the thought process, is the CCL monster caught them last year, like it does with every team that goes far. At least they won it and made it worth it. And, you know, the roster's good enough. The roster's good enough to compete for MLS Cup already without doing anything. Now, Craig Weibel stepping in. There are some long-term questions he has to solve here. The question is, do you just run it out, be really good this year, and then figure it out? Or do you get preemptive? Christian Roldan's on the last year of his deal. Jordan Morris is coming to the end of his deal. Nico Lodera, obviously, at some point, you're going to hit the timeline on his, you know, how good he can be. Do you want to be preemptive about any of those moves? They don't have to do that. And if they don't, they're an MLS Cup contender. João Paulo returns at some point this season. But if they choose to do that, that's sort of what Seattle's been good at for a really long time, is being a step ahead, having that backup plan before things hit them. And so that's going to be sort of the challenge for Craig Weibel, is can he step in to what Garth Lagerwey did and do it at the same level? But from a pure roster point of view, this team's ready to roll out there and go.
MLS Cup contender, Charlie? Like, what did you say? Let's say among your top 5 in the whole league, would the Seattle Sounders right now be in that spot?
Yes.
What gives you faith in the Sounders team, despite last season, despite finishing 11th in the West? I think they had 17 losses, which is just unheard of, obviously, for Seattle.
I'd say health. Given time to recover and get healthy, you have the Club World Cup, which is exciting, gives guys a platform, gives guys that experience of competing with the best. I just think they have a lot of players who can help this team move forward. And so if everyone is healthy, they're going to compete. I guess the problem with the Sounders is depth. They don't have much depth. So for me, that's if their players can't continue to perform throughout the season and they have to rely on depth because of injuries, because of age, that this team isn't going to compete. So it'll be sure.
Between these 3, who has the more impactful season for the Sounders, Dave? Danny Leyva, Josh Atencio, or Obed Vargas?
I'm always...
Or hey, let's throw in Reed Baker-Whiting just for some hype. God, Anders, how could you do that to us? I know you care about that question. It's not right, man. That's not right. Okay, Colorado Rapids. The thrilling analysis to come. Rapids, they got Kevin Cabral. I like that move for the Rapids. I think it's a smart move. You kind of talked us through it from a Montreal perspective, Dave, and we've talked about it on this show already. Like, They're not going to go spend $6 million on a player. So why not take a punt on a guy that was worth that, has good underlying numbers, is still young, and is under control on his contract for a couple more years? Cole Bassett is coming back from his loan. I like that a lot as well. He should be super driven because that loan did not work out. Like, it didn't work out at Feyenoord, and it certainly didn't work out. I've already forgotten at the provincial town in Holland he was at that he wasn't particularly enamored with, Dave. Do you remember? Sittard?
Sittard.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Giassi's Zardes is gone. He signed a free agent deal with Austin, which we'll talk about in just a second. Left back Lucas Estevez is gone as well. Daniel Boniface hit us up. He used to cover this team. He says he wants a striker who can complement Diego Rubio in the attack and a center back who can pass. Who am I kidding? I'll take an upgrade anywhere Porig can find one. So
can I just on that? Or are you going?
No, you have something. Go ahead.
I think Rubio is your center forward because I think Max showed last year at his best he's a 10. Cabral you're bringing to the team, Jonathan Lewis you already have on the team, Barrios, and then Cole Bassett as sort of an attacking, whether it's a 10, dual 8, whatever it is. I think this team now, it's been for the last few years, okay, Rubio can play both roles. Where is the talent and where do you need him? I think right now he's your number 9, and I think that's fine.
Could you see a world where Cabral is the 9? And they're more just like they're just more like a direct like counterattacking team, and he makes runs. He makes runs in the channels or hard runs across the box, and Barrios and Lewis are sort of your wingers, and Rubio is withdrawn a little bit and is a late arriving runner / string puller, which he seems pretty good at, and Bassett's next to him. I don't know, just throwing ideas out there. Some other news for them: Steven Beitashour re-signed. They do have 3 center backs that they think they could rely on. Viacia was a pretty big trade expenditure from Cincinnati. Wilson and Abubakar would be your starters. Jack Price is there. Ralph Priso, Dave. He played like 190 minutes after they
didn't use him at all.
Yeah, like what can he be?
I don't know. I love him as a player. He's super high possession, in traffic, can keep the ball, can set the tempo. You've already seen him do it at an MLS level. This was a guy Robin Fraser asked for because he knew him from his time with TFC. He then, in a year where they were not competitive, didn't give him an opportunity at all on the field. So it feels hard to say that he's going to be a factor, but I do think on the field he can be really special. And your hope is this is just a young kid who left home for the first time, traded out of nowhere in the middle of the season, and it just took a little time for him to settle in.
I'll fit this in. Some sort of rumblings that the Rapids, who have not been using their DP spots really at all, might fill more than just the Cabral one. So that's something to keep an eye on. Daniel said he wants that number 9. That could be the number 9.
Joseph Martinez.
Hey, let's see what happens there. All right, let's keep it rolling here. Dave, you've got the Vancouver Whitecaps. Vanni Sartini had a very candid conversation with us before they missed the playoffs, I should say, where he said, hey, we basically wasted like the first 2 months of the year. Well, they got to get that right. Jay Sand hit us up and said they want a new DP winger or striker to replace Cavallini, who is gone. There have been a number of moves for Vancouver, sort of like a little bit quietly. Cavallini gone, Nerwinski traded to St. Louis, Cody Cropper gone, Godinho gone, Toussaint Ricketts, I expect retired, Owusu gone, Genio Bikel gone, and they signed a couple MLS Next Pro kids. They need to avoid injuries, and they probably have one big signing to make.
Maybe, but even if they don't, it goes back to what Sartini said, which is if they can play at their level for 34 games, they're a playoff team. They've proven the last 2 years doing it for half the season. 1 year they made the playoffs. The other year they just fell out on the final day. So the whole question mark for Vancouver is how do they hit the ground running? I think they did a lot of their work in advance, right? They brought Schopfin during the season last year. Kubas is obviously already there. Gressel was a guy they traded for during the season. Luis Martins, they signed last year. So I think most of the work they did last year. And if they have that belief in Thomas Hasal, then your hope is that last year was sort of that training experience for him that he needed to be able to be the starter. But in general, the starting lineup is pretty set going into the season. If they can just compete at a high level to start the year, they'll be a playoff team. And then that gives you time to decide is Vite for real? Is Brian White for real? And then you can sort of figure out, okay, what does that other DP signing need to be? But I look at a team here that's already a playoff team without making that signing because how much they hit a home run on Kubas and Gald and what they've done with their other pieces. Like, if White's healthy and the pieces are all set, Julian Gressel is going to put up, 12, 13 assists this year at least. This is a team that fits together really well, and that's got to be exciting for Vancouver fans where, as you said, Sartini already expressed the understanding of what's gone wrong and seems ready to help fix it.
Alessandro Schaff is not a guy we've talked about a ton, the Austrian they signed in the summer, but he only played 7 games for Vancouver. If you just look at Vancouver's core and how many games they got together compared to, cores in the Western Conference that made the playoffs, like let's say FC Dallas, for instance, because they really didn't experience any injury issues all year, Vancouver were just chopping and changing all year long. Charlie, if you were going to sign a DP, a difference maker for this team, where would you sign them? Assuming they're going to play that 3-5-2.
I would probably sign a difference maker on the wing.
Even with the wingbacks?
Yes.
Okay, so like a second forward type to play with White?
Someone who can create chances. They need someone who can not only score, but also create chances. So I think in this Vancouver system, someone who can get wide and provide service and create chances will be a huge benefit to this team.
God, timing just immaculate right there. Portland Timbers, Charlie Evander's biggest club signing in their history. He's also in the top 10 incoming signings on just pure numbers in MLS history. So that's a very, very big move for the Portland Timbers. TBD on Eric Williamson. You sort of teased that Revs possible connection. We don't know what's going to happen there. But we have Jimmy, we have Jimmy, excuse me. I always this is the reader in me. I always sound it out. Santiago Moreno's still around. The only real loss that I see is Jose Carlos Van Rankin, and we can debate on level of loss there all we want. Mm-hmm. So what are the big questions? It's Williamson. Can they hold on? Can the aging stars, particularly on the back line, still hack it? And then I think the big one that I would throw at you is is the number 9 actually on the roster right now, or do they need to go out and make that signing as well?
Well, they've already given a proposal for Kasper Junker. And I had the opportunity to play with Kasper Junker in Denmark for Randers. So he moved over to Norway and then to play in Japan now. So he's young. He's 28 years old. He's a prototypical striker, a player who stays central, but he's a good goal scorer. He can really connect with the ball. So he's a pretty good finisher. But I haven't been convinced with the striker position for Portland, and I don't think they have. It's been spotty with Niashgoda, and they've had to rely on their wingers to score goals, or Blanco, someone who's at number 10. So their front 3, although I like Santiago Moreno, I think he has a high ceiling. It's still yet to even come close to fulfilling that potential. But Asprilla and Niashgoda, they are, for me, rotation players. They aren't consistent starters. They are depth pieces in this league if you're trying to compete for MLS Cup. So they could definitely use a striker, and then you could still. Diego Chara is still going to be someone who can win the ball back and be influential in this game. I think they need a 9 if I'm going to look at it, or just another creative winger who's dynamic, who can score, but someone who's going to be a player who can create chances as well. So, yeah.
Do you think the guy you mentioned, who Tom I think is connecting, has put out there, do you think he's that 9 that's good enough with the rest of this team?
No, I don't.
Okay.
How many connections have we made so far? So we have Ronder's connection.
Hammerby.
We have a Hammerby connection for Charlie. DC. Have we made a Revs connect? Could we make a Philly? Could we just go?
We didn't make a Philly connection.
How can we make a Sochaux connection?
Giroud, so France, the France connection,
nice.
Liga.
But did he play at Sochaux? That's the question.
He didn't play at Sochaux.
No, he played at Grenoble.
That's good.
And Montpellier. So
yeah.
Okay. Zach McGraw with a extension, the young center back for the Timbers. He was a guy in the expansion draft I thought would have been a good choice for St. Louis. They ended up going with, I believe, John Bell. There you go. Real Salt Lake, Dave. Yeah, so Krylock, I guess back. I guess.
That feels like, listen, I don't think anyone would be, everyone would love if that was the case, but it would be dangerous for a team, a professional sports team, to plan on having someone like that come back from an injury like that, right? He'll be 33. He missed the entire season.
Yeah.
And he missed part of the season before, or no, it happened at the end of the season before. I can't remember. So listen, with RSL, I keep coming back to the same thing. Goals cost money. And this is a team that has done as well as anyone could do against the cap, making smart moves, promoting kids out of their academy, finding pieces from other teams, finding pieces out of the draft. USL. Savarino, I think, is a high-level DP, but you need a center forward who scores goals at some point. They've tried the by committee. They've tried the injured players trying to resurrect their career. They've tried all these moves, and so now that's really where it falls. If this new ownership group is going to propel this team in any way, it doesn't have to be $25 million, right? You just need this one position, because I would argue they don't need help defensively. Zach McMath was one of the best goalkeepers in the league last year.
They might need help defensively. Marcelo Silva, I don't think is.
They're still talking to him.
Yeah, he could come back. Yeah.
So it feels like everything else already is set up for this team, and center forward is the huge question. And if they don't answer that, then I can't imagine them being better. But also, credit to them, I don't think they'll fall off. They will compete for a playoff spot with the group they have, plus whatever pieces have to come in to fill out a roster.
Did you mention Sebastian Cordova in there?
No. Sergio?
Yes. There's a lot of Sebastians. Yes. Sergio Cordova. He led them with 9 goals last year, I believe. Savarino came in and got 7. It seemed pretty like a good bet. It seemed that he was going to be back with this team, given the ownership connections. It seems like less of a good bet now that he'll be back as it was before. So then if that's the case, you're talking about a forward line of, you assume Damir Kraljic as a second forward, maybe Rubio Rubin, who really didn't get much run last year at all, despite them giving him a big contract the year before. Danny Musovski, who, big proponent of Danny Musovski, but probably not a guy that you want to have penciled in as your starter. And then child Axel Kaya. I believe he still qualifies as, until you're 18, I think he would be a child, and I think that's where he is at still. So yeah, pay for goals. That would be important. But you know what? Waffleson, Ruiz, the human spirit, they figured it out before.
X-Dog.
Yeah, they'll figure it out again. But what is ownership's vision for this squad and this project? What is their vision? Are they willing to put their money behind that? We will see. All right, Minnesota United is me. Steven.
Uh-oh, spoilers.
What?
This is a team. Charlie, stop me if you've heard this before. Alex Collins would be a really great signing.
Oh, you took Stephen Geller's comment away from him. He says, I'm staying with MLS free agents, and I would love if Minnesota United would sign Alexander Collins to stabilize the defense, similar to the way they did with Ike Opara a few years back. We probably deserve an agent cut of any Alexander Collins free agent deal, as we've linked him with literally every club and said every club could use him. So hit us up if you'd like to pass on that little bit of a coin our way. Yeah, look, that Debasi injury really killed him last year. And also it seemed like the fact that they just didn't have a ton of trustable depth at different positions, whether that be at center back or in the midfield, center forward, for instance, as well. So they've gone out and tried to address some of those moves with veteran MLS signings, like guys that have been there and done that. We're talking the likes of Clint Irwin, Zarek Valentine, Danielle Henry, traded for Cameron Dunbar. That's less so a veteran depth move and more of a gamble on a Galaxy youth product. They traded away an MLS Next Pro guy and Aziel Jackson to St. Louis. He was a guy who'd been good in the lower level there. I have a couple questions. One, will the real number 9 please stand up? It does not seem like it's Luis Amarilla. How many guys have they gone through at that position, and just none of them have seemed to be the dude? When is Debasi coming back? I think he had a hamstring issue or a quad issue, some sort of muscle tear. You would think that he would be back. So if he's back, that'll solve some issues. You put him next to Boxall. You have Dane St. Clair in the back, and things are probably going to go the right direction for you. The first group is really good. They're going to find an 8-week span in the season where they're among the best teams in the league. It still doesn't feel to me like they have the depth or the difference makers outside Reynoso to be in the elite bucket. Charlie, it doesn't feel like they have that.
No, I mean, Dane St. Clair, I think that's someone you can build around as a keeper. So, I think the inconsistencies that we've seen from him in the past have gotten better. So he's someone that you can rely on. He came up with some big saves throughout the year. But I look at their center back pairing, and it seems like it's gone a little stale. So that's got to be better. And if you could get a player like Alex Collins and you throw everything at him to try and sign him, that would make a massive difference up the spine of this squad. The two defensive midfielders they played, Robin Lod there, and it worked. But we've seen how effective he is in more of an attacking role. But when he does play there, you need to play someone who is a little bit more, apt to cover space and be more of a defensive presence, because Will Trapp is not that player. So you lost bite within that midfield. And I think that was something that was lacking from Minnesota down the stretch, is having someone who could be that tough defensive midfielder you can rely on, which will give more space to Reynoso, Robin Lod, Fragapane. This team needs a stronger 6 or a partnership with Robin Lod, and then the 9. And that's all they're missing. If they can get that in order, this team can compete. And like you said, they are lacking depth.
All right, FC Dallas, I'm throwing this to you, Dave. We're going to shuffle the order just a tad because Charlie went over time, and so I'm throwing it to you. Just a tad. Just a little bit. It's okay. Egg Saladino says he would like a buyout for Franco Jara so Dallas can bring in a new DP in the offseason instead of having to integrate one in the summer.
Sorry, Egg Salad. And trust me when I tell you, I love Egg Salad, but that's not going to happen.
No? See, this is funny because remember when they signed Franco Jara and we were like, yeah, great signing, partially because it was a free. This is like their punishment for the free on the front end because they had to sign him in the summer. So then the contract extended all the way through the summer. It's just funny how those things work.
Yeah, it's also less funny for them that he hasn't been good, but they haven't bought him out yet.
Correct.
So yeah, the money's less now, but it feels unlikely to happen. Also, they were 3rd in the West last year with him on their roster. So it would be surprising to see them get rid of him. I think for Dallas, it's really straightforward, right? They bring back Marco Farfan. We saw the contract yesterday. Why wouldn't you have belief that what worked last year will work? Plus, Paxton, a year now back, can he grow on his performances? Ferreira, how does he grow as a player in this team? The younger pieces, which they didn't really have a lot of the academy or North Texas kids push into the team last year. How can they affect your team and make you better? And then Sebastian Lletget for a full season, right? This is a guy that they picked up midway through who didn't integrate in, and yet they were still, again, able to go to the second round of the playoffs and be a 3 seed. So for Dallas, it's fairly straightforward outside of center back. Matt Hedges obviously is gone. He started 26 games for them last year. They were, on pure goals conceded, the best defense in Major League Soccer. How do you replace him? How do you take a step forward at that position? I said when they signed Sebastian Ibeagha last week on this show that I think that's probably most of it. Ibeagha is a spot starter. You have to have belief that one of the 2 players on the roster, whether it's, a young Colombian that they brought in, as well as Nkosi Tafari, that they're going to be ready to take a step because you already invested time and energy in both of them because you believe they have that potential. So for the most part, I would assume Dallas has done a lot of their work, and it's just about gelling those pieces together and giving them the best opportunity to pick up where they finished last year and try and push on a little bit higher.
What would you do with an open DP spot if you were Dallas? Let's just say that they do buy out Franco Jara. There's 2 spots that I would look at. The 6 would be one of them. If you could get like a João Paulo type to play behind Lletget and Pomykal, because I don't think you're going to go spend it on Areola, who you invested a bunch, like record game in. I don't think you're going to do it on Velasco.
I think it would be a 9. I think you'd slide Ferreira into another spot and you spend it on a 9.
Interesting. Okay. All right, FC Dallas, a big season for them. Obviously, a first good one for Nico Estevez. Out of that Greg Berhalter coaching tree, him and Lucci now in jobs. in Major League Soccer. By the way, Marco Farfan signed an extension with Dallas as well. So congratulations to him. And we didn't mention it, but Jose Mulato, who was a transfer from Deportivo Cali, spent last year with North Texas. He has been made permanent as well. Okay, on that note,
Charlie's going to like him. He's a true 9.
We're going to the Galaxy, Charlie. So they got a little bit of an issue in the transfer market in the summer, so they got to address some things in the winter. Maybe Aaron Long coming in, maybe a DP winger of some sort coming in because they've moved on from Kevin Cabral. What does this offseason look like for the Galaxy, knowing that it's a very important one, given that they're not going to be able to bring in out-of-league players in the summer, given their punishment for whatever it is, TAM DP, what's called fudging on Pavone the first time around.
Well, can we just admit that they got bailed out with the Cabral trade from Colorado Rapids? I know Colorado needed a player anyways that could give you a deep threat.
Yeah, but it's like scratch my back, I'll scratch yours. Yeah. Not only do we get our $1 million in GAM back that we lost by these sanctions, but we also opened a DP spot and got out of 3 years of Kevin Cabral.
Yes.
I'll agree with that.
But Ricky Puig, Brugman, Caceres, those were all massive signings last year for them. I think Grandsir grew into a player where you could get something out of him consistently. I think it took him a while to adjust to the league. And so with this team, I think they do have what it takes to make a good run this year. They have some good pieces right now. And Raheem Edwards, I think, turned into a solid left back last year. We saw what he could do. Julian Araujo on the right side. Bond, I think, needs to be better this year. I think he took a step backwards, too inconsistent. But that midfield, that's the heart of this team. Delgado, Brugman, and Puig. If they can continue to stay healthy and build off of what they did this past season, this team will be all right. And then you just have to make sure that Dejan Joveljic is on the pitch this year. He's done enough to earn his chance to play from start and figuring out what that looks like with Chicharito in the mix. That's going to be the toughest challenge as a coach. When you have a player who had to fight and claw for minutes and he's performed, but you still didn't want to start him and give him the belief, the confidence. But now coming into an offseason where he's done everything in his power to make sure he's fit and ready to go, integrating him in this 11 with Chicharito, figuring out how does that work? Where are you going to play him? Knowing that Chicharito has to play the 9 and that there's no other conversation for Chicharito as far as positioning. But is it 2 strikers? Is it 3? Is it a withdrawn 9? Figuring out what that is, but Joveljic has to play, and that midfield trio has to keep this team moving forward.
Speaking of bailouts, the Derek Williams trade to DC.
Ooh, that's another one.
Yeah. Also another one. So Greg Vanney now pulling the strings for the time being for the Galaxy. This is a big transfer window for them. Big time. We'll see what happens with that.
Did Charlie just preempt the buzzer on his own and get it wrong?
I didn't know what that was. Honestly, I was like, what's he doing here? And then I picked it up. Yeah.
Oh, gosh. Thanks, Anders.
You know what? Next time, Anders, let's just have Charlie record a variety of buzzer sounds, and then you can plug that noise in.
Who's Charlie Davis?
What was that? I didn't hear that.
There it is.
That. What was that?
Thanks, Anders.
Just one more time.
Who's Charlie Davis?
Yep. Yep. I love how, by the way, he kind of fades away. You can't even hit the S on the end. Who's Charlie Davy? Okay, Austin, that's me. Kevin Morris hit us up and said the Swordfish 4350 armored 1000 professional A2 laminator is top of its class for business grade laminators, and we're going to need that again this year. That is for all the lamination of various predictions. I don't think Austin is going to get much intrinsic motivation from.
They can loan it to the Red Bulls for you and Charlie, guaranteeing they don't, or San Jose as well.
I also think you could probably loan it to Orlando if Felipe's there. Inevitably, that's going to come for Orlando too. We sort of like, not that good. But Giassi's the big signing, and they didn't have a ton of room to make big signings outside of Giassi. Their DP spots are filled. You've got Rigoni, who's got to live up to that DP spot. You've got Driussi, who has more than lived up to his DP spot. And then you have Alex Ring, who opens up the U22 spots that have mostly not been lived up to either. So they needed to find a way to upgrade the roster. Number 9 was really the spot. Maxi Urruti got hot He was out here shooting arrows at times, but in typical Maxi fashion, it just wasn't consistent enough. So Josh Wolf and Claudio Reyna go and get Giassi's artist, who, of course, Josh Wolf knows very well. The best years of Giassi's career in Columbus came with Josh on that staff with Greg Berhalter. This is a good move. I think it's a really good move. I think Giassi, in this sort of system, in a system he understands, with the sort of duties that he thrives at, making hard runs, being the guy that leads the line, being somebody for those wingers to play off of. Charlie, I'm going to put his over-under on goals for the season at 13.5. Would you agree with that over-under?
No, that's not the question. You ask if he goes over.
I'll take the under.
Well, no, you take the under.
Yeah.
So I think that was a good number then, because I would have expected you to take the over.
Well, I'll take the under.
I was saying, was my line good, Dave? What would you take? You going over or under on that?
I think that line is high, to be
really?
honest. Yeah.
With the amount of chances they created, with Driussi drawing attention behind him, with Fagundes on the wing, and look, if Rigoni gives you anything, it's it's more than he gave last year. Over or under, Dave?
I just gotta say, you gotta remember how Giassi scores goals.
Tap-ins.
Giassi is a striker who thrives when you have wingers or backs who can get to the end line.
Yeah.
Austin are all about coming inside. Their outside players come inside.
So I'm gonna go under, sort of in Charlie's vein, but not the same. I just think literally no one was hurt last year, and the odds of that happening again are pretty low. I think Rigoni obviously takes a step forward and is better this year, so you could say the roster is better, but I just don't think they'll create as many chances as they did last year. So I think Giassi's going to be good for them, but I think that number is probably a little high, and then I think the safe bet is to just go under.
All right, I'm going over. I got faith. I don't think he's gonna be like hitting 20, but I think like 15, 16 goals is very reasonable for Giassi. Okay, well, we did that. Let us know what you think of that line. LAFC, Charlie, and that will conclude our show. What are the big questions for the defending champions? They have the double, the Shield and MLS Cup. They still have Carlos Vela, Dennis Bouanga for a full season. Christian Arango is still here. Sifu hasn't been sold. Palacios hasn't been sold. Kellen Acosta is there as well, but Gareth Bale, TBD on that one. What's the story of their offseason so far? No ins for them, but a lot of sort of like way down the roster outside of Ibiaga, who was obviously a starter in MLS Cup.
Yeah, and I'd say Sebas Mendes as well played really well for Ecuador in the World Cup. So much so that Sifu was a bench player, and Mendes was the one who really gave this team credibility and was breaking up plays. He was the one that they missed the most because of the yellow card suspension, and the team was not the same. So I think we got to see just a snapshot of how good he is, and I'm sure he attracted a lot of interest. So it'll be interesting to see if he gets brought back into this team as a starter, giving more playing time, or is he still on the bench for Cifuentes, Ilya Sanchez, and Kellen Acosta? So that'll be interesting.
I think he can also leave. I think his contract's up.
Yeah, Mendes?
Yeah, so if Mendes wants to leave, Charlie, he doesn't
agent.
need to get sold. He in MLS or outside of MLS, he can go wherever he wants.
He should have options.
It feels like he probably won't come back.
And then I'd say Gareth Bale is probably not someone that you want to bet on in the future, just because of his health. That's not because of his quality; it's because of his health. It just doesn't seem like he can run at full speed anymore. At least he can't sustain it. So in terms of the whole project of bringing Gareth Bale here and giving him a chance to play, to get fit for a World Cup, and also mutually try and help you win an MLS Cup, you did that. If LAFC didn't win MLS Cup, then you're like, okay, we were really close. Maybe we'll bet on Gareth Bale getting healthy. Right now, you got that. You got that cup. Now you want players to come to LAFC. The name is out there. You can attract whoever the hell you want. So I would say you keep that DP spot, because Carlos Vela is probably, after next season, would probably be moving on. And then you look to invest for the future. This is a young team in certain areas, players that you will eventually sell off, but you go back to back. That's got to be the goal for this team. Nothing less. I think Bouanga is gonna be set up to have a massive year.
Is he your MVP frontrunner? Early take for 2023?
He's up. I'd say he's up there to be one of the 5.
Okay.
See you next time.
All right, we got it. A little Simon Borgen here. It just reminds me that my see you next time on Instant Replay these days is not living up to the legend. All right, it's been a long show. It's been a fun show. We went through all 29 teams. Any thoughts? Any wish lists? Anything about the offseason you want us to talk about? Let us know. We'll be back on Monday. I will not be around. I don't think Doyle will either. We're headed to St. Louis. Again, Wednesday, the MLS Super Draft presented by Adidas goes down at 4:30 p.m. Eastern. That's the pre-draft show. The Super Draft starts at 5 p.m. Eastern. You can watch on YouTube, Twitch, Twitter, and MLSsoccer.com. Doyle and Devin Kerr will be analysts on that one. We'll have Jillian Sakovits there to do interviews. Susanna Collins will be chatting with all the draft picks as well, and we'll bring you through the first round. Always a really good time. We talk about the players themselves who are drafted, give you some cool footage of that moment with their families, which honestly is the best part of the Super Draft. And then there's always breaking news to talk about as well. So Tom Bogert is scheduled to be with Dave and Kaylin on Monday. They will wrap up the Super Draft a little bit, do any news that we missed, and answer your questions. And then Thursday, that's going to be our last show of the year. We're going to take a break and come back in the new year. And of course, there'll be news to talk about then. But Thursday will be our last show of the year. We'll wrap up the Super Draft. Might talk a little bit about the MLS schedule, which I think is supposed to come out sometime. I don't actually know, but it will be out. So we'll talk about that as well. And in the meantime, have a great weekend, everybody. We'll see you on Monday. Adios.